Right, that's why I would ask. If there was something.
Ready?
And you are live.
Beautiful. Good morning, everyone. Joint Legislative Management Committee, May 29th, 2025. And we have a short meeting to get an update from our Sergeant at Arms about the State House entryway project. I believe Senate Secretary is going to level set for just a minute.
Hopefully less than a minute, because you only have about 10 or 15 minutes. You may recall that last meeting you had, the Sergeant at Arms came in, give you a presentation. You asked her to do some rework. So she's here today to do that presentation. As you'll note on the agenda, there's a motion where if it meets with your approval, you'd be asked, sort of ask her to go to the next step. I think she'll explain to you kind of the steps and then come back with a report sometime during the next session. And so the idea would be for her to give you a quick presentation. If it meets with your approval, do the motion and then let everybody work on this very busy day. We all set?
Beautiful. Thank you. And Agatha, you want to join us?
If it's okay, I'd like to invite Sean Brennan from Freeman French Freeman
Sure.
up with me. And also introduce, so Agatha Kessler, Sergeant at Arms for the record. Sean also introduce Laura from Historic Preservation, David Sheets, our state curator, Scott Moore, JFO, our chief, Sherilyn from BGS, Laura from BGS. This is and I think we have some people also streaming in from Freeman French Freeman just to provide. It's a big group that worked on this project. So, and thank you everyone for being here. So, thank you, Christy. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. We're quickly going to go over the design. Sean will do that. We'll touch on site conditions. That was a question that came up the last JLMC meeting. That the site is aka parking, and then get you to a point where we can hopefully vote on the design. Next slide, please, Christy. So just to remind JLMC, we are talking about the design phase of this project, and there are two design phases. One is schematic design. That's what we're in right now, at the tail end of that. And schematic is considered conceptual. These are drawings. These are not very detailed, but gives you an idea of what is possible. And when I say possible, there's significant limitations to doing a project like this, the ledge, all the things. So most of our time is spent figuring out what's possible. Then there's design development. So the vote today would push us to the next phase, which both of these phases, by the way, are already funded. The funding has already been allocated. And that's where there's a lot more detail developed. The exact materials, we talk to stakeholders, we figure out exactly how the space will be used. So the decision today would get us out of schematic design and into design development, which again are already funded. So now I'll turn over to Sean. Next slide, please, where we get into the much more interesting pieces, what this could actually look like.
Right, so and I will go by my notes to keep it brief. Very longer. So as Agatha said, we're in schematic design and most of the way through. That means is we've developed a program for this space, and that tells us how big the addition and the work needs to be. So what is this project supposed to accomplish? We set the goals for the project through that, and that's through stakeholders that we've engaged so far. So really what we come up with is a concept. It's a vision for what this could be. And we looked at multiple options through the process, and this is the one the group settled on as far as the vision. It's not exactly what it will be, but it's the concept. So as we move forward through the next design phase, there'll be some pluses, there'll be some minuses from this in both design and in the cost, because when we price this is done by square foot. It's not done by an actual takeoff that you would see a contractor do, because we're not at that point yet. So some pluses, some minuses. And the site budget actually is a good example of that, because we don't have a design for that yet, although we know the general areas of what we want to do. So we put some numbers to that. And the important things for this design are public access. We want to enhance safety in the State House as well, and security. A big component of this is security, which you do not have right now. So, and architecturally, that's where we have our main emphasis is we want to be contextual with what we're doing. We want to be sympathetic to the State House, but we don't want anyone to mistake that this is part of the historic construction. That's important, because we don't want to try to fool somebody into thinking this has always been here. We want it to be appropriate, but we don't want it to seem original. So if we can go to the next slide to look into this a little bit more. So the floor plan is really where the costs come in. That's where we determine the size of the project that we're dealing with, the scope of work. So we've right-sized this over the course of the schematic design process. So we came in before with different levels of scope of work for this, and you reviewed that for us, and we have since gone back. And this process is always going to be iterative. There's always more input, there's always more adjustment that needs to be made. That goes for the design and the estimate. So we'll be constantly doing that. Public entry was the key for this. And how do we get people into the building in a secure way and in a way that's accommodating for people of all abilities? And that's what this design is attempting to do on the west side of the building. You're looking north is up, south is down. So State Street's down the sheet. And so this is to the left side where Baldwin and Aiken. See here, one key component is this currently is not a very attractive space. As you enter the building, this was the COVID entry, all of that. It's also the delivery entry. So what we're trying to do is separate the public use and the delivery use. And that's what this is doing. We've created a zone at the top of that entry that provides separate entrance for deliveries that go directly to the back of house area. And so the public would come in the circular portion, the back of house is the rectilinear portion. And once they're inside, they go through screening, and then they have a direct connection through the courtyard space that's currently unenclosed. It'll be enclosed and a connection directly down to the Lincoln corridor. So the wayfinding is very simple for someone visiting the State House. It's line of sight. You can see where you're going.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So you still have delivery coming in to the same spot. Are you gonna blast into the ledge to increase that spot that delivery trucks can go in as well as people coming in? Because it's pretty narrow in there. So I understand splitting it in the addition. But what about the parking lot and parking and backing up those delivery trucks?
So there's two things we've discussed about that. One is timing. So scheduling deliveries is going to be even more important than it is now. And everyone recognized that and that it is possible. But to that point, not everything can be scheduled to be on time.
Right.
That's why we've pulled it separate from the entry. So the public will be on the south side of this. Deliveries would be on the north side, in the lot as well.
But it's not very wide in there.
Correct.
Unless you're losing some parking spaces
Yeah,
and you
you are.
redesign
We are.
that parking lot.
Yes, we are. That's the site portion of this. Absolutely. So that's an excellent point. And that's why the next phase will develop the site more, but we have accommodated dollars for that. So we've said what the scope would be. We just haven't come up with the design yet.
So is that a yes, no, or maybe that you might need to do ledge work?
We have accounted for some ledge work.
Okay.
We've tried to minimize a bit, but you're absolutely right. We need more width in order to accommodate both flows of traffic.
Yeah.
So that's what this is doing. We have accounted for that in the estimate. And so it will be off section work. So even the disruption will be tried to be minimized. So you won't have to listen to jackhammers or anything like that. But
And would there need to be some redesign in the building to access the kitchen for the deliveries?
the area that has the crosshatch, I don't know if you can see that,
Uh-huh.
that is renovated space.
Okay,
So all of that will be adjusted because we need that back stair. We will lose the mezzanine stair because we're traveling through there now. We need the back stair, and that stair currently doesn't meet code. And so that's part of what this work is.
Mhm.
We need a dedicated exit for that, which will be that service entrance. So it's not a main public, it's only used in emergencies, but it is necessary.
And so will that redesigned elevator, I don't know if that elevator does go up to the new spaces already. Yeah.
We will refurbish that elevator as part of this project.
Essentially, this will be the main elevator. Right now, it's kind of our not main elevator.
yeah.
We call it the service elevator.
Yeah.
That will ostensibly become the most used elevator in the building.
Mhm.
So we'll, as Sean said, refurbish it.
Mhm.
I think the key points of this entryway is as soon as you step into the building, a visitor, a member of the public, they have immediately available to them security, a person, that can help them, a restroom, elevators, stairs, and information about how to use the building, which we don't currently have. So
So let's take a look at the exterior.
And also, I
Oh,
think it's
sorry.
important for folks to see where you have security.
Yes,
There's a box that says hold. That would be what I would interpret almost like a holding area.
yes, we're interviewing people who may
For
need
security.
further screening. Absolutely. And part of the security is also, we don't want people who are denied access for various reasons, that happens, to be brought back through the public area. So we have a way to get people out through the site.
I think we're ready for the next slide. And Commissioner Manoli was just able to join us. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you.
So the main purpose of this is to show scale. There's three things that facilitate wayfinding, and as a public entry, we want to have people know where to go to enter the State House. One is scale, one is geometry, and the other is materiality. So we do not want to overshadow the historic portion of the State House. We do not want to be a bigger scale to draw attention to ourselves to do that. So that leaves geometry and material. And so what we've explored here is we can take something that's a familiar element because there is the drum on the dome and it is round, it is this proportion. And we can use that to call attention to ourselves in a discrete way. And then use something more transparent to say, hey, this is a public open space. Let's be transparent about our entry and draw people in. And that's what this is trying to show here. So it'll more as we go through the design phases, but this is the vision. This is the kernel that you work with moving forward. So we can go to the next slide, please. And this gives you a better view in 3 dimensions of what this is like. Actually, the lower right does show you that we are going into the end of the bank a bit. We try to minimize it so we're not completely buried, but we will need to do some work there. And this is just the perspective is showing that transparency and how you approach the building and how the service entry is off to the side and minimized.
And just to clarify, I think I know the answer, but if we were to approve this, it's possible to imagine that we could build another story onto this in the future.
We can make it such that you could, because it all has to deal with the structural steel that you put in the building or the structure. If it's timber, we can do that as well. We explored that. We have actually a design that did have another story on there previously.
I remember.
Yes, you did.
So we can do that if that's a charge that we want to make sure we accommodate.
Just wondering, you have the 17+ million price tag. Is that with a buildable version? No.
The estimate includes the second.
It doesn't include a second floor,
But
no.
weight bearing, is it built?
Wait,
Yeah.
Is
wait,
it
So that in
built
the
for weight
future, we
bearing?
could build.
We have a structural line item to account for the potential for that. It's not much money because this is a very small area.
Mhm.
So the difference in a roof load to a live load for a occupancy is very small. So at this stage, we have such broad numbers for square foot calculations.
Yeah.
It's hard to say if it's exactly in or if it's not, but we have a line item that covers a good amount of structure for this building.
Okay, you're drifting into a language I don't understand. So
Okay.
So
I'll just put it this way. When we saw the design that had the conference rooms built there,
Yes.
the price tag was too high. So we've scaled back. But my understanding was that what we were potentially going to approve could be built on in the future. And is that the case with this? What you're bringing,
That can be accommodated. Yes, it can be.
but it is not in this.
This design, I'll get it 2 points.
Okay,
This design does not have the stories as we just discussed. This design does have an accommodation for a structural line item to accommodate future build out. So we have the accommodation for this zone to be able to carry weight to do that.
but again, I'm losing you on I'm just looking for a yes or no. And I feel like what you're giving me is, a line item and an accommodation. I don't know what that, does that mean we would have to pay more in the future to be able to build on it? Or does it mean that we are taking into account in this build, a platform that could be built on in the future?
Is the building built for weight bearing within the 17 million? Does that include that addition being built in such a way that it's weight bearing for another floor on top of it? That's the question.
Yes, with the level of information, the level of accuracy we can give now, yes. The answer would be yes.
So it would be weight bearing. It meets code right now.
Yes, because of those. Correct. The,
So I agree with this. And when we built the cafeteria, we built it weight bearing. At the time, we met all the codes. Now it doesn't meet the code. So we can get in the same situation here, which
Mhm.
just don't know.
Could change in the future.
Could change 20 years down the road.
right, you wouldn't know. There would be cost associated with changing it over, not just building, but you have to remove things, the roofing, all of that.
Yeah,
That cost isn't accounted for.
Right.
understood.
Yeah.
Right.
Understood. So let me, if I could just say, we're at our announced time. We have one member who's gonna need to leave at least. How do people feel about a motion and a vote? Do you feel like, I know some of us have been updated outside the room, so if I'm seeing nods, so that being the case, I would entertain a motion for action.
So I'll move that we go forward, I guess, into the
Senator,
more specific.
It's at the bottom of your sheet.
Excuse me, I move to approve the schematic design dated May 29th and request an update during the 26th adjourned session.
The motion is on the table. Is there discussion? Seeing none, I would ask the Senate Secretary to call the roll.
Representative Dolan,
Yes.
Representative Tooth,
Yes.
Representative Wood,
Yes.
Senator Lyons.
Yes,
Representative Inman,
Yes,
Speaker Kowinski,
Yes.
Senator Baruch.
Yes. And that is
7-0-3.
703. Thank you all very much. Thanks, Agatha and our architects and everybody who has been in on this. I know it's a large group.